Hello, I'm Colum Coleman, and welcome to Historical Humans Reads, where we take primary sources and bring them to your screen. Today, we'll be reading a translation of the speech given by Alexander the Great in response to the Opis Mutiny, as recorded by the Greek historian Arrian. The Opis Mutiny was a rebellion of the Greek army under the command of Alexander the Great, following his military victory at the Hydaspes River in 326 BCE. Having conquered 2 million square miles of territory over 13 years of military campaigns, the Greek army refused to partake in any further conquest beyond the boundary of the Hydaspes River. Though he did acquiesce and turn back, Alexander's response condemning their actions is considered one of the greatest speeches in history. If you enjoyed this video and would like to hear more excerpts from original texts, be sure to leave a comment down below to let us know what you thought of the video or to suggest any future topics that you would like to see. The speech which I am about to deliver will not be for the purpose of checking your start homeward, for as far as I am concerned, you may depart whenever you wish. But because I wish you to know what kind of men you were originally and how you have been transformed since you came into our service. In the first place, as is reasonable, I shall begin my speech from my father, Philip. For he found you, vagabonds and destitute of means, most of you clad in hides, feeding a few sheep up on the mountains, for the protection of which you had to fight with small success against Illyrians, Trebalians, and Thracians. Instead of hides, he gave you cloaks to wear, and from the mountains he led you down into the plains and made you capable of fighting the neighboring barbarians, so that you were no longer compelled to preserve yourselves by trusting rather to the inaccessible strongholds than to your own valor. He made you colonists of the cities, which he adorned with useful laws and customs. And from being slaves and subjects, he made you rulers over those very barbarians by whom you yourselves, as well as your property, were previously liable to be plundered and ravaged. He also added the greater part of Thrace to Macedonia, and by seizing the most conventionally situated places along the seacoast, he spread abundance over the land from commerce and made the working of the mines a secure employment. He made you rulers over the Thessalians, of whom you had formerly been in mortal fear. And by humbling the nation of Phocians, he rendered the avenue into Greece broad and easy for you, instead of narrow and difficult. The Athenians and Thebans, who were always lying in wait to attack Macedonia, he humbled to such a degree, I also then rendering him my personal aid in the campaign, that instead of paying tribute to the former, they became vassals of the latter. Those states, in their turn, procure security to themselves by our assistance. He penetrated into the Peloponnese, and after regulating its affairs, was publicly declared commander-in-chief of all the rest of Greece in this expedition against the Persians, adding to his glory not more to himself, but then to the commonwealth of all Macedonia. These were the advantages which were accrued to you from my father Philip, great indeed if looked at by themselves, but small compared to what you have obtained from me. For though I inherited from my father only a few gold and silver goblets, and there were not even 60 talents in the treasury, and though I found myself charged with a debt of 500 talents owned by Philip, and I was obliged myself to borrow 800 more talents in addition to these, I started from the country which could not decently support you, and forthwith laid open to you the passage of the Hellespont, though at that time the Persians held sovereignty of the sea. Having overpowered the viceroys of Darius with my cavalry, I added to your empire the whole of Ionia, the whole of Aeolus, both Phrygias and Lydia, and I took Miletus by siege. All other places I gained by voluntary surrender, and I granted to you the privilege of appropriating the wealth found in them. The riches of Egypt and Cyrene, which I acquired without a battle, have come to you. Syria, Palestine, and Mesopotamia are your property. Babylon, Bactria, and Susa are yours. The wealth of the Lydians, the treasures of the Persians, and the riches of the Indians are yours. And so is the external sea. You are viceroys, you are generals, you are captains. What then have I reserved for myself after all these labors, except this purple robe and diadem? I have appropriated nothing myself, nor can anyone point out my treasures except these possessions of yours or the things which I am guarding on your behalf. Individually, however, I have no motive to guard them, since I eat the same fare as you and take only the same amount of sleep. Nay, I do not think my fare is as good as that of those among you who have lived luxuriously. And I know that I often sit up at night watch for you, so that you may be able to sleep. But someone might say that while you have endured toil and fatigue, I have acquired these things as your leader without myself sharing in the toil and the fatigue. But who is there of you who knows that he has endured a greater toil for me than I have for him? Come now, whoever of you has wounds, let him strip and show them. I will show you mine in turn. For there is no part of my body, the front at least, that remains free from wounds, nor is there any weapon, either of close combat or from hurling at the enemy, the traces of which I do not bear upon my person. For I have been wounded by the sword in close fight. I have been shot with arrows. I have been struck with missiles projectiled from the engines of war. And though oftentimes I have been hit with stones and bolts of wood for the sake of your lives, your glory, and your wealth, I am still leading you as conquerors over all the land and sea, all rivers, mountains, and plains. I have celebrated your weddings with my own, and the children of many of you will be the kin to my children. Moreover, I have liquidated the debts of all those who incurred them, without inquiring as to how they were contracted, though you certainly are paid high enough, and carry off as much loot whenever there is loot to be got after a siege. Most of you have golden crowns, and eternal memorials of the valor and honor you received from me. Whoever has been killed has met with a glorious end, has been honored with a splendid burial. Brazen statues of most of the slain have been erected at home, and their parents are held in honor, being released from all public service and from taxation. But no one of you has ever been killed in flight under my leadership. And now, as I was intending to send you back, those of you who are unfit for service, objects of envy to those at home. But since you all wish to depart, depart all of you. Go back and report home that your king, Alexander, the conqueror of the Persians, Medes, Bactrians, and Sacians, the man who subject the Uxians, Arachotians, and Drangmians, who has also acquired the rule of the Parthians, Chorosimnians, and the Hyrcanians, as far as the Caspian Sea, who marched over the Caucasus, through the Caspian gates, who crossed the rivers Oxus and Tanais, and the Indus besides, which had never been crossed by anyone else save Dionysus, who had also crossed the Hydaspes, Acenes, and Hydrates, and who would have crossed the Hephaestus if you had not struck back with alarm, who had penetrated the Great Sea by both mouths of the Indus, who marched through the desert Gadrosia, where no one had ever before marched an army, who on his route acquired the possession of Carmania and the land of the Oretaians. In addition to his other conquests, his fleet having meantime sailed round the coast of the sea which extends from India to Persia. Report that when you have returned to Susa, you deserted him and went away, handing him over to the protection of the very foreigners you conquered. Perhaps this report will seem glorious to you in the eyes of men and devout in the eyes of gods. Depart. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to be notified about our latest content, follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, or Discord at Historical Humans, or on Twitter at History of Humans. Links will be in the description below. Thank you for listening.